One of the things I learned early on as a scholar is that there is an ummah. And when Muslims react to certain international events, they react with a sense of commonality. But the other thing I learned is that the ummah also exists, but it doesn't exist in this sense. I went from one Muslim country where my wife and I were living to another, and people said, "Why are you going there? This is the best possible place to be." Well, I said, "But, you know, it's another Muslim country. It has, but we set the tone for the Islamic world, and in fact, our people go there and educate them." You see, that kind of little tension that then can get played out within the American experience and can weaken the Muslim community. That's what I meant by communities where you don't just have a kind of integrated Muslim community, which you have, and you have many of them here. I've seen them on the West Coast. I've seen them in Toledo. I've seen them in many communities. But in many others, when you land in a city, you can identify the mosques almost ethnically. You got the Pakistani mosque, you got the Turkish mosque, you've got the... Now, some of the mosques are filled, and some of them aren't. Mobilizing and getting beyond that. Developing a community that has more cohesion, but also developing a community that's not only moving into some of the professions, but all of the professions. So that when one faces the kind of religious questions that one has to face in terms of the adaptation, if you will, an encounter of Islam with the American scene, you actually have Muslims who not only know their Islam, but know America. Too often you have some who know Islam but don't know America very well, who just come over here. You have those that know America but don't know Islam very well. Now, don't be offended when I say don't know Islam very well. What I mean is that one can know Islam devotionally, but not know it in terms of the kind of intellectual resources that one needs for interpretation. I like to say that Muslims, Jews, and Christians have shared an experience as they adapt to America, and even internationally. You move into modern education, and what happens is people grow up and get an education university level. But for many, their religious knowledge stays at the same level that they had as children. You know, so they become, if you will, PhD physicists, but their knowledge of Islam is still here. In terms of their knowledge of Sharia, their knowledge of Islamic history, their knowledge of etc. And unless one really understands the realities of one's faith and history and its the tremendous dynamism of Islam and how that dynamic played out, how Islam both preserved its essentials but also was dynamic enough to interact with other cultures, to transform them, to borrow from them, etc., one cannot move forward. Let me bring this talk to a conclusion. Although somebody told me that Ataturk gave his famous 6-day talk. I thought that was very interesting. I'd like to try that sometime.
Go ahead.
You know, I mean, that was... Oh, also, another example of how Muslims have become excessively Americanized. I spoke at an ISNA meeting years ago. There were about 5,000 Muslims, and I got up and I said, relax, sit back. This talk may go 30 minutes, it may go 3 hours. People were immediately going like this. And I said, you know, 25 years ago when I went out in the Muslim world to talk, nobody was looking like this. In fact, when I was in Iran recently, the Minister of Culture began a conference that I was speaking on Islam and civil society, and he said, maybe if we're going to have a civil society here, one of the first things we should do to be civil is to start on time. I've noticed we're not starting anything on time, he was commenting.